Steve Thomas's theory is based
You're
on
not going to answer.
is that our child wet her bed and we slaughtered her. That is so preposterous.
You weren't there, John. You can't know.
I was there. I know Patsy.
You
I've
were
lived
there.
with her for 20 years. I know that she loved that child more than anything in the world.
Did John just say he was there? So last time we were looking at Steve Thomas and Patsy Ramsey and John Ramsey go back and forth as moderated by Larry King. And some of the things that they went over, they were trying to talk about, Patsy and John were trying to pull the theories that Steve Thomas said about them. They were trying to pull it out of him. Going back to some of the same old, talking points. What's your theory? You don't know what you're talking about. Why would I harm my child? You don't have any proof. You don't have any evidence. All the experts that you call are trash. Matter of fact, you don't even call any experts because you're not asking for any help. All you're trying to do is profit off of my child's death, and yada, yada, yada. That's essentially the attacks that are being leveled on Steve Thomas. And Steve Thomas, I don't think he's very well prepared for this. He has some good points, some good starter points, but I don't think he's well prepared enough to kind of fend off the Ramseys, because the Ramseys really aren't saying anything. They're just throwing stuff out in the atmosphere, and they're just hoping that something sticks. And their game plan is to cut you off and just be like, how dare you? How could you ever? So picking back up after a break.
At the Ramseys, your theory of the crime is, just so we have it right, committed by a male intruder, a psychopath, and ex-con or nose criminals, entered the home while you were out to dinner, and original intent was to kidnap, and then killed after that. Have I got that right?
Generally right. Most importantly, though, is the sequence of events which are supported by forensics experts. JonBenet was professionally made garrote. The last act this creature did to my beautiful child is strike her in the head with a vicious blow. She was either dead or near dead when that blow was administered.
Now, I know detectives like to put together things, so Steve, help me. Put together what you think happened that night.
Well, I certainly don't think this, and I still haven't heard this comment. Kidnap gone awry theory. Is that it? Is it that simple? That's
simple.
That this person came in the house, had to find Patsy's pad, had to find a pen. I'm responding to your last statement.
No, we'll get into each one. Give me yours, and then we'll.
Well, no. He's making a good point, because if the intruder came in, their theory. I was wondering why he kept saying that, but the theory is not complete, because if you're saying that JonBenet was assaulted or she was abused in that way by a child abuser, if you're saying that, then what's your theory on that? Because you're saying that somebody came in to kidnap. That's your theory. This monster came in to kidnap. No. Explain more thoroughly. What happened? Did something go awry? Explain that to me more thoroughly. Make that make sense. Because you keep telling me somebody came in and they tried to kidnap her. And essentially what you're trying to get me to believe is that they got away with it. But they didn't. What happened to where they didn't get away with it? Make that part of it make sense.
Examine each one of the things.
Well, as I've said, I think it takes a very simple explanation that's consistent with the evidence. Who wrote the ransom note? Patsy, who can't be eliminated?
Before that, what do you think happened? As you're putting together a crime, let's say that police try to put together a scenario in the O.J. Simpson case, and that scenario was he came upon this scene, he reacted out of rage, he ran. They had a scenario.
Well, certainly in a domestic homicide, some evidence that might otherwise be incriminating that could be explained away. I think there are some lacking pieces of the puzzle here that
they hid.
No, that prevented beyond a reasonable doubt in the minds of prosecutors from taking this case
What do you
forward. But
think
I
happened?
think there was a toileting issue that night that has been dismissed and
Okay,
underplayed.
toilet, explain.
A bedwetting or a toileting issue.
That caused Patsy to get mad at her daughter
Absolutely.
and say slap her or hit her or
I don't know. I'm suggesting
punish
that there
her.
was an explosive encounter because Patsy at one point put the child in clothes, a red turtleneck, for example, not the same clothing she was found in deceased the following day. I think something happened in that bathroom.
What would lead then to garroting and hitting on the head? What would lead
I
to
don't
that?
know. What can you imagine would
What can
lead
you-
to
what-
garroting or hitting on the head?
What can you imagine? I can't imagine. I want you to look at me and tell me what you think
Patsy, I'll
happened.
look you right in the eye. I think you're good for this. I think that's what the evidence suggests.
Steve Thomas, you are
So in other words, she killed her daughter in a rage over the bedwetting, and then
So what? So what? Complete the sentence. He is so what? Kind of don't have anything to say, do you? You really don't. Because y'all were on fire a little bit earlier, but you don't really have anything to say. You should be able to retort back pretty quick.
garroted her.
Yeah, this is interesting hearing this theory because, again, it's not consistent with forensic experts that worked with the police department,
That
law
theory.
enforcement in this case. Right.
I disagree. Totally disagree. JonBenet, in fact, the autopsy report says this. JonBenet died of. That
Where
is
am I supposed
consistent
to have learned
with our
how to
theory.
make this garrote?
John calls it a very skilled instrument of some sort. It was. You admit now, do you not, that it was your paintbrush that was used? Do you admit that?
I don't know.
Steve,
Well, no, I care. Let her answer the question,
If
John.
the
Please.
perpetrator was in our home, he
Your-
had
your paintbrush-
access. He had
forgot
access.
the kidnapper who forgot his ransom note.
Steve,
The
what-
kidnapper who
what
forgot
do
his
you think
pen
the
and all his
perpetrator
tools
was
of the
doing
instruments.
You know what? This isn't. We're not going to solve this tonight, and I refuse to have a Jerry Springer type exchange
It's
with
not.
this man.
It's not.
You know, this has subverted.
I mean, that's what y'all were doing earlier. You wouldn't give the man a chance to talk. He's making some excellent points. I know you don't like how he's presenting them, but he's making some excellent points. This dude who showed up, because that's what we're all asking. This dude who showed up with nothing. And you're saying, oh yeah, he could have found anything. He showed up with nothing and just botched everything, but was smart enough to wipe the DNA away. What?
Justice in this country like nothing in the history of the Constitution of this country.
Irrelevant.
We have had now 2 detectives from the Boulder Police Department. First, Detective Arndt comes on and emphatically, as emphatic as Mr. Thomas is this evening, says that John Ramsey was the murderer. She could see it in his eyes the day that we found JonBenet. Now, Mr. Thomas, as emphatic, but with yet another idea of how this happened, says that Patsy is the murderer.
Well, would you agree, Patsy, that almost none of it makes sense?
You're right. It
None
was
of
an
it.
evil.
What was the guy doing? Why did the
This is
intruder do this?
man.
evil
I don't know,
person.
but when we find out, God
You will
willing,
know
we'll
when
know.
we find this creature.
But this person stalks the streets. I don't mean to be
Yes,
too
yes.
Absolutely.
maudlin here, but
Yes,
there's
he
someone
does.
out there.
Well, somebody better get.
I think it's interesting how Patsy's voice gets soft around some of these words or these sentences that she's saying. It gets soft.
Well, would you agree, Patsy, that almost none of it makes sense?
You're right. It
None
was
of
an
it.
evil.
What was the guy doing? Why did
evil-
the
This is
intruder
an
do this?
man.
Evil
I don't know,
person.
but when we find out, God
You will
willing,
know
we'll
when we
know.
find this.
I don't know, but we find out. God willing, we'll know. Like, there's no force behind that. Like, there should be like a drive-through to say, why would somebody do this? And Patsy's response would be, I don't know. I don't know why somebody would attack my daughter. It doesn't make sense to me. It's very frustrating. I've cried for days. There's no drive-through. There's no there's no desire or strong sense of passion toward a resolution. Like to even, it's like you don't get the sense that they want this solved. You don't get the sense that, I don't know, but I really want to find this person. And I really want to bring this person to justice for what they did to my daughter. You don't get that. You get somebody who's just like, I don't know who did it. I don't know why they did it. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll find them. It's like maybe one day. Maybe one day. That's what it feels like. It feels like, I don't know. It's like you lost $1. You know, you lost $5 behind the couch. And when you picked up the couch, the $5 was gone. And somebody says, hey, I thought you said you dropped the $5 behind the couch. I don't know. It's $5. Who cares? You're talking about the. You're talking about the. You're talking about the murder of your daughter, like you lost $5 behind the couch. You should be in tune with the result of what's happening. Do you care? Because it feels like you don't. It feels like it's just like, if we find him, we find him. If we don't, we don't. But man, she hesitated when she says, but man, is it a man? What were you about to say? I heard John do that one time. And it was like a stutter down to this man. And John said something. I was thinking about that before I even got to this in terms of their language pattern. And I was like, it's like a stutter step down. Now, I can't remember where he did it, but Patsy just kind of did the same thing and then softened her tone to where all of the energy, all of the anger toward this monster that they described it earlier just kind of dissipated out of nowhere. Where did it go?
But this person stalks the streets. I don't mean to be
Yes,
into
Absolutely.
maudlin here, but
Yes,
there's someone
he does.
out there.
Well, somebody better get worried about it because there are children in this country that are just as vulnerable
To your
as
knowledge,
JonBenet
I got to get a break. I want to ask when we come back, to your knowledge, are the Boulder police still working on other suspects? We'll be right back. Don't go away. We're back. Our guests are John and Patsy Ramsey. Their daughter, JonBenet, was killed 3.5 years ago, and they're the authors of The Death of Innocence. Steve Thomas is the former Boulder police detective originally assigned to this case. He's author of JonBenet, Inside the Ramsey Murder Investigation. Now, back to no qualms here. You're not out to get them, right?
Absolutely not.
And you don't think he started out to get you, right? He believes his theory. You're
No,
not
I think
questioning
he
it.
believes it, as flawed as it is. Let me ask this question.
Well, how about the
If-
convoluted theory? I still haven't heard
Yeah,
that, John.
it's
I
there.
had to
Where did that
explain
come
my
from?
theory. Let's
The-
hear this
What
kidnapper.
Steve Thomas's theory is based
You're
on
not going to answer.
is
No,
that our child wet her bed and we slaughtered her. That is so preposterous.
You weren't there, John. You can't know.
I was there. I know Patsy.
you
I've
were
lived
there.
with her for 20 years. I know that she loved that child more than anything in the world. I would have given my life for JonBenet. Patsy would have given her life for JonBenet.
Did John just say he was there? Now, I don't want to read too much into this, but Steve Thomas earlier In the other video, Steve Thomas said, John, you weren't there. How would you know? And John backed off, didn't say anything. But Steve Thomas came back and said, hey, John, he says it again here. John, you weren't there. How would you know? John says, I was there. No, what I'm talking about is there in terms of being there for the murder. And I think because Steve Thomas made it clear earlier when he was talking, he said, no, you weren't there. You were asleep. So when Steve Thomas brings it back up and says you weren't there, alluding to what he said earlier, you weren't asleep or you were asleep, John says, no, I was there and my wife wouldn't have done that. And neither would I. So it's almost like John is admitting to being at the scene of the crime and not being asleep. Somehow being awake. Somehow having knowledge and being there in some capacity when JonBenet was killed. He said it, not me.
Patsy would have given her life for JonBenet. And
I'll kidnap
what
her.
Steve Thomas's theory is based
You're
on
not going to answer.
is
No,
that our child wet her bed and we slaughtered her. That is so preposterous.
You weren't there, John. You can't
I
know.
was there. I know Patsy.
you
I've
were
lived
there.
with her for 20 years. I know that she loved that child more than anything in the world. I would have given my life for JonBenet. Patsy would have given her life for JonBenet. And I'm sorry we weren't able to.
Are
do
you
that.
saying that if it were Patsy, you would never have covered up?
Absolutely not.
No.
Not in
Because he's saying, I was there. And he's essentially defending and saying Patsy didn't do it. Because if she did, I would have threw her under the jail. But also consider what they're not saying. Who they're not putting in that conversation. Who they're not mentioning.
New York Minute.
So you never doubted
No.
your wife,
No.
ever,
No.
not for a second.
There is sufficient evidence to a trained eye that an intruder came into our home. The forensic evidence supports.
And he came with the idea of what?
I don't know for sure.
Well, kidnapping.
We speculate. One of the world's leading profilers, John Douglas, has said that this killer was angry with me, or was very jealous of me. And this was an anger or jealousy that was acted out against me.
Instead of taking it out against you, he kills your child.
Sadly, yes.
You don't buy that.
Well, certainly the colleagues, John Douglas's former colleagues in the FBI, are not of that opinion. It's interesting that the defense paid experts and investigators and so forth that are working on the case have one opinion, whereas law enforcement and those in Colorado working this case have another.
Well, so
Are
Steve,
they
you're
looking
telling
at
me
other
that,
suspects?
I'm going to take a step back for a second. John said that somebody was mad at him. And so like I'm trying to place that. So that would be like a crime of revenge. So somebody's coming in to get revenge. Who would want to get revenge? And number one, number two, revenge would come with a very linear path. I get the child, kill and leave. I get the child, abuse and leave. Or what have you. Like those are really, or I get the child and take the child and write a ransom note to let you know that the child is gone and essentially don't play with me. You know, you disrespected me and this is the result. Now you want to play with me? My revenge is pay me money to get your daughter back. Now let's see how tough you are. Those are very clear paths. What John is saying is that this individual, and what Patsy is saying is that this individual had a need for misdirection. Like when we're talking about this individual who would have committed this act or this crime of revenge, this individual wanted to misdirect. I don't think that'd be the case at all. This individual would have committed, and there would have been a direction of positioning to let the people know this was a revenge act. You need to know. I can outsmart you. They wouldn't scurry off with misdirection. The misdirection that's provided is like a scurry off. I'm scurrying off, trying to hide. This individual who wanted to sort of exact revenge would not do that. They would do something to let you know, I'm smarter than you. You disrespected me. I'm not going to let you know who I am, but I'm going to let you know enough about you're dealing with somebody who's actually smarter than you. And now look what happened to your daughter because of your disrespect. For the revenge to be complete. I might call myself the wet bandits and leave all of the water faucets in the houses on. But if I get away with it, what's the issue? As long as you know somebody is out there outsmarting you. This individual did none of that. This was botched. This individual botched this. That's not like, that doesn't go with the revenge at all, because you're like, oh, they wanted to kidnap, but they also wanted to abuse. They just really couldn't make up their mind about how they wanted to get me back. They really just didn't know. It don't work like that. That's not human behavior. It doesn't make sense.
This killer was angry with me, or he was very jealous of me. And this was an anger or jealousy that was acted out against
Instead
me.
of taking it out against you, he kills your child.
Sadly, yes.
You don't buy that.
Well, certainly the colleagues, John Douglas's former colleagues in the FBI, are not of that opinion. It's interesting that the defense paid experts and investigators and so forth that are working on the case have one opinion, whereas law enforcement and those in Colorado working this case have another.
Well, so
Are
Steve,
they
you're
looking
telling
at
me
other suspects? by the way?
We paid John
Yeah,
Douglas.
it's
And
interesting.
Lieutenant.
The Ramseys at this point, of course, the Boulder police will look at any legitimate suspect that's brought to them. But at this point, until the Ramseys satisfy the Boulder Police Department that they are not involved in this case,
Well, you're asking them to prove their innocence.
well, they cast the cloud and the initial doubt that hindered their presumption of innocence.
Why,
By not
Steve?
coming in?
Why do we have
Well, it's
to
it's
prove our
interesting.
innocence? That
You
is
don't,
fundamentally
you don't, John. It may be
contradictory to the
fundamentally wrong, but at this point, given the evidence and
what
where
evidence?
the authority,
What evidence, Steve?
how long do
Tell
we have,
me
John?
one-
It took us 2 days.
Tell me one tangible piece of evidence that's presentable in a court of law
Well,
that
as
says
I
that
said to you,
one
agree
of us
with you,
can
though.
kill
How
our
about
daughter.
the idea that
That's irrelevant. We build a case based on the pieces of evidence. You don't first say, okay, if we have one piece of evidence to say we can take this to court right now, this would have been wrapped up. That's an ignorant statement by John. What we're saying is, I grabbed this piece of evidence, and this is going to lead me here, here, and here, and here, and here. We can put all these together and come up with a theory, and then take you to court. Take your trial. That John knows that. That was an ignorant thing to say. What are you talking about? What one thing do you have legally? We have a preponderance of evidence. We put together the evidence, and then we take you. That's what we're talking about.
if I were accused of killing my child and didn't do it, I'd be down there at the police office. I'd sleep in the police
This was
office.
the
I'd
police.
ask him any questions.
This
I'd do
was
lie
the
detector
police.
tests.
This is
I'd
who
do
we
anything.
had to work with.
How much
We're
time
not
did you
fools.
spend at the Boulder Police
We're not
Department
fools.
since
Get back
this
to that.
murder?
We still haven't heard.
That's what I'm saying. Larry just made all of our points. If it was us, we would have slept down there. And they said, well, look who we had to deal with. I don't care. I'm not quantifying the time that I would have spent at the police department based on who I'm working with. It doesn't matter who I'm working with. I'm down there anyway.
Scenarios
Well,
Steve.
when you
I haven't
hurt
heard
yourself,
yours, but
though,
Patsy,
you
how-
did, Patsy.
how
You
many
hurt yourself
hours?
when you hired a lawyer. You
We
hired.
didn't
Let me
look
tell
Larry,
you
let's
something.
explain how that happened. We were crushed. We were devastated. We had lost our child. Our youngest child was murdered in our home. Friends surrounded us. They did things for us. They made decisions for us. That included bringing in lawyers and acting in what they thought was our best interest. We did not make decisions in those
In
early
retrospect,
days.
was that a mistake?
No, not when I saw Linda Arndt go on national television, who was one of the detectives, and say, I saw it in John Ramsey's eyes on December 26th. He was the killer. Now we have her counterpart and colleague saying that Patsy's the killer. This
They
was an
can't
early
blame the
decision.
cops when they're not there helping. You know, on one hand, they're
They
screaming
were
for the
with
murder to
us
be solved.
24 hours a day.
No, in
Patsy,
other
you
words-
haven't answered this question.
Were
How,
with us
to this day,
24 hours a day.
as we sit here tonight, how much time in the last 4 years have you spent in the Boulder Police Department with the detectives working this case?
I don't know, but I'll tell you
It's-
that
it's
much.
zero.
I have
You never were there?
invited
You've never
them.
gone to the Boulder Police
Oh,
Let
Department.
her answer the
Okay.
question.
All right.
please.
Patsy, he asked the fair question.
How many overtures have been made to them, including one on the table right now, for us to come and talk with them and bring our detectives and our investigators and share information and work together, put pride and prejudice aside, Mr.
You're making that
Thomas,
offer to them now.
and work to find the killer of this
Are
child.
you making a commitment to go into the Boulder Police Department next week or next month and sit?
So John Douglas was hired by the Ramseys. I think pretty early on, he was hired by the Ramseys, according to the press release. And the Boulder Police Department actually worked with him and asked him when they couldn't get in touch with Patsy and John. And this is in the press releases. When they couldn't get in touch with Patsy and John, they talked to John Douglas as a way to try to understand more about and try to get answers, because they were basically like, since you're talking to him, we can try to talk to him and get what answers that we can. Hopefully, as you know, you're a proxy for Patsy and John. We'll talk to you until we can talk to them. So what Patsy is suggesting, the cops already did.
Sit down for an unlimited amount
Cooperation
of time
is
to
a
cooperate.
two-way
All right, but
street.
why he's got
okay?
a fair offer? Why not go to? He's not
Two-way
there.
street.
Why not go to the police department?
Here's what we've laid on the table. We have told Chief Beckner that we need them to help find this killer. They have absolute authority over this case, and that's not going to change. We've had investigators, seasoned investigators, collectively with over 500 homicides under their belt, who've been working on this case day in and day out. They have questions. They have information.
Why don't you all get together?
We would love to.
So why don't
Go
you
down,
go?
go down there next week.
Why not go there next
We'll
week?
be,
with your-
if we can go there tomorrow with our investigators, sit down with their detectives, get all questions answered, we'll be there
Why
tomorrow.
would they not do this?
Absolutely.
Okay,
I'm
so
glad to hear
it's on
this.
the table. You would go to Boulder tomorrow with your private investigators, meet with all their detectives, and sit down for as long as it takes.
Sit around
to
the
get through
table
this.
and let's get all the questions.
the
They've
Boulder-
got questions. We've got questions.
Boulder should say to this tomorrow morning, come
Well,
aboard.
well, it depends because I
Why?
hear a hidden caveat here
Which
that,
is?
that it
What's
ha-
the caveat?
What?
that
This is
if
the problem.
if you're offering, I'm not there anymore, John.
Well,
I'm
you
a
know,
citizen
let's
who's
say,
concerned
they're
that you won't
offering
go
to-
into the police department
They're offering
and
to-
answer police
They're
questions.
offering to come with all their investigators, answer any questions, present their side of things.
It's June 1st tomorrow. When are you going to be at the police department?
Steve,
You're
you're
not
not,
in
it's
charge.
not up to you. You're not in charge.
No, but they
quit.
made the offer. If,
You
police,
made
if, the,
the offer.
well, let's go.
Offers on the
If the
table.
Boulder police called you and said, come down next Monday, you'd come.
With our
With our
investigators,
They would come.
their detectives around the table, you bet.
Okay, we'll be right back with more. Don't go away. Come down next Monday, you'd come.
With our
With our
investigators,
They would come.
their
investigators.
detectives around the table, you bet.
Okay, we'll be right back with more. Don't go away.
So I was looking at that. So I was like, who? Because I saw that at the corner of my eye. I was like, who initiated that? And Patsy initiated that interaction. It's interesting.
Now, back on the FBI thing for a moment. One would assume that the FBI, all they want to do is gather evidence. They don't care if you did it or didn't do it. They're an investigative
All
agency.
we asked for is independent polygraph.
Why is the FBI not independent?
Because they've been holding the hands of the Boulder Police for the last 2.5 years.
But you think the FBI wants you to be guilty?
I think
You
they
think they
have a
care?
vested interest. I don't know for
The
sure.
FBI is part of
I'm
some
saying that.
great
Could
conspiracy.
I answer the
John?
question?
Yeah,
that's
why?
answered to me?
Yeah, the FBI.
I don't know. I have friends in the FBI. They're good people. All I know is they're not independent. The Boulder Police stated to us it would take them a week to get the polygrapher from the FBI ready to ask us questions. That shouldn't be necessary unless there's other motives in mind. The question is very simple. Did you kill your daughter? Did you write the ransom note? Do you know who killed your daughter? If we
don't
answer
need any
those
more than
truthfully,
that.
that's all
I know
you
the
need to
Boulder
know.
Police said the polygrapher needed to know more.
Well, there's
What did he
no-
need to
there-
know more than
in a
those people?
polygraph? There's no legal consequence to a polygraph at this point, and the chief of
Colorado.
police, the chief of police has even said he's not accepting the results of this polygraph, and it doesn't make or break the case one way or the other. But you've now passed a polygraph. Will you not submit to an FBI polygraph?
Why?
The polygraph issue's over. The people that
Why
gave
is
us
it
a
over, John?
polygraph.
And these people who are saying the polygraph, they're saying that it's simple, and they know it's not. They know the polygraph tests were super long, and you know it's not simple like you're trying to make it seem. So I don't know why you're asking. Oh, it's simple. It don't matter who administers to it. If you ain't lying, you ain't lying. I don't care who asks me. If I'm telling the truth, I'm telling the truth. I can tell anybody that I'm telling the truth. It don't matter. But the fact that you picked your people and you still didn't pass, it don't matter.
Why is it over? Is the
Train
FBI part of this break?
Steve, could you
Is-
you
is-
ask
are
me
they-
a question? I'd like to answer.
Well, you don't allow me an opportunity.
Why would the
to answer.
FBI care?
I don't know. But all I asked for was independent. Look, we were never asked to take a polygraph test. When we were asked
It's not
on
in
national,
Colorado doesn't allow it in court, right?
Steve, let's address that right now. Cover your book.
What?
Your book, your disgraceful book. Why? His inside story answers a wide range of important questions. Why were the Ramseys handled with kid gloves and never asked by law enforcement to take lie detector
Because
tests?
the DA carried you in their pockets.
But then
during-
don't tell me it
during
was
their-
wrong. It's in your book that we
You,
were never
you had a
asked.
press conference last week.
I'm
If I-
saying
let
we
me
were
answer
never
it.
asked.
Larry,
to
it's
take
only
lie
fair that I
detector
get
What
to
happened
answer.
at the press conference?
At the press conference, they released a press packet in which they gave the verbatim transcript. And I think even Alex Hunter has said that anybody reading that transcript, a monkey could understand what was asked. Let's call that ancient history. I'm asking you today, not 3 years ago.
Larry, if I'm reading this wrong, correct me.
And again,
but,
Larry, he's not letting me answer
no.
the question.
Yeah,
But,
but-
three years ago, we're talking about, we're right here at the table tonight. Will you take an FBI-sponsored polygraph? And the answer is,
Why will they not review the polygraphs that were taken? Why has he made a statement that says they are unacceptable when he has not even taken the time to look
well,
at them?
when you're at the police department next week, ask them these questions.
That'd be great. If you can broker that deal,
Mhm.
boy, that'd be a great thing.
We'll be back with
Why would Steve Thomas broker that deal? Why would Steve be broke? You said you don't. It's none of his business. Why would he do that? He has nothing to do with this. Why won't you take the FBI exam? And now you're essentially saying, now we're getting down to the heart of it. You're essentially accusing, and now this is getting ignorant. You're essentially accusing the FBI of the same thing that you're accusing the Boulder Police Department of. So you're saying two things. You're saying that the FBI believes the Boulder Police Department, as incompetent as the Boulder Police Department is, the FBI believes them. That's why we will not submit and subject ourselves to a polygraph test from the FBI, because they believe the Boulder Police Department. Number one. Number two, as big as the FBI is, now you are accusing, or you're stating sort of covertly or you're implying, in a sense, that the FBI is as biased and incapable and ignorant as the Boulder Police Department. That's what you're implying. You're now implying that they are just as bad at doing their jobs. They're just as bad at doing their jobs. The FBI, a federal organization with multiple offices around the country. They're just as, what you're saying is they are just as incompetent. They don't have the resources, just like the Boulder Police Department is what you're saying. So we shouldn't believe the FBI either. It just gets dumber and dumber. It really does. It just gets dumber and dumber. It's one thing to accuse the BPD of that, but now you're accusing the Federal Bureau of Investigation of being as incompetent as this local police department with all of their resources and their intelligence. They can't step back and take a holistic view of the entire situation and come to the conclusion that y'all might be guilty. Y'all might be guilty. Y'all will get mad and say, you're incompetent. I don't want to talk to y'all. I don't have to. Doesn't matter. We're going to go get our own FBI profiler, the people who taught you, and we're still going to fail the exams. We're still going to fail the polygraph, but that's okay because we're just going to keep on taking it until we pass. And then I'm going to sit up here on Larry King Live and act like I don't know what y'all talking about. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. I did everything that you asked me to do. You failed. Inconclusive. Distorted. You guys, no matter what you do, you can't get it right. No matter how you try to weasel your way out of it, the forensics and the DNA and the autopsy report are not your friends. The handwriting analysis is not your friend. It's not none of this stuff. The thing that is not going to be permitted in court, the polygraph exams, even those are not your friends. Guys.
Or on we'll be right back. Don't go away. Just to go over this, your theory is this was based on bedwetting, anger, and then it turned into cover-up, right?
I do.
And that's the reason. And then the writing of the note was after the fact,
That's what I believe.
after the baby is killed.
That's what I believe.
Patsy writes the note, and John complies with her.
No, I think I don't think John was involved.
But John covers.
I think John's had some questions in the weeks and months that have followed.
Can't speak for you, Steve.
Well, I said I think. Believe it or not, John, I'm entitled to an opinion.
But all this started with bedwetting.
I think so. Yeah, and this is not out of the realm of concept. It happens every
You
week
know
in
of
this
other
country.
cases?
Yes, it's interesting. You brought out my book. In your book, you talk about sponsoring FBI or legislation bringing the FBI into any child.
Bringing
And
a
if I,
federal
Larry, let me finish
agency.
the question.
Okay, federal agency.
Well, who do you want? The Border Patrol?
I would like an
I
agency
think
that knows more about child crimes than you did.
I think, John, and if you let me finish the question, you have said you want federal law enforcement brought into crimes where a child has been killed.
Right.
But in this case, you don't want them brought in because they're part of this great, vast conspiracy.
I would have been, the biggest
Why,
mistake
why
I
not
made.
now?
Excuse me, Steve.
Why not now,
The
John?
biggest mistake I made when this happened was that I didn't call the FBI directly. I called the Boulder police.
They were there that
That
day.
was a horrible
The
mistake.
FBI
They
was
were
there
not
on the
leading the
26th.
investigation. Linda Arndt was leading the investigation.
You should call the
I
FBI
should
right
have called
The FBI was there and
Should have
advising
called
from day one, John.
I never saw them. They were
What-
never
What?
in
They
my
were at your
presence.
house.
I wanted them, if they had been called to lead the investigation, that would have been a much better
Mr.
solution.
Ramsey, they were at your house.
They were not in our house.
That's
yes,
it.
they were.
You
If
weren't
didn't
there.
do this,
You were not
that's
there.
if you
What?
didn't do this. You're out of your mind. You must be going out of your mind no matter what.
I'm not going out of my
No,
mind
I mean-
no matter what.
Well, I mean by out of your mind, if you did it, this was terrible. You didn't do it, you're being accused of doing it.
They skipped right on past the fact that the FBI was in their house, and all they can say is, no, they weren't. Steve Thomas is correct. From day one, the FBI was consulting with them, telling them what to look at and what to look for and what they would do. That bullcrap about John calling the FBI directly, what the heck are you talking about? Oh, I should have called the FBI directly. It doesn't matter because the Boulder police did it for you. That's an irrelevant point. What are we talking about? It's irrelevant. The BPD called them for you. And then they turned around and told the BPD, look at the parents. Ron Walker went on record on the interview and said, we told him to look at the parents. We would have looked at the parents. They're doing what I don't understand how hard it is to comprehend that. I don't. How hard is it to understand that? My God, we called the FBI and the FBI thought you did it. They said, look at the parents. And the BPD did just that. And you jumped in your book. And this is how I know you're not paying attention, because you then jump in your book and say, we want to support legislation to get the FBI, a federal agency, involved in this. John, that's already in the legislation. There is a trigger, if I understand it correctly, if there is a trigger of taking a child across state lines, then the FBI jumps in. But other than that, they leave it to the local authority unless they just absolutely have to get involved. Why do you think they do that? Because the FBI has limited resources. We can't be doing the job that the local agency is supposed to be doing. What sense would that make? Let them do it. They're plugged into their community. They know everything about their community. They're doing the order. It's like you don't understand the protocol or the order of operations or the steps to take. Local agency, then if necessary, federal agency. But for some delusional reason, you're saying, oh, federal agency first and then local. It does not work that way. FBI doesn't have time. So in whatever capacity that the FBI did show up, they said, look at the parents. For this reason or this reason, look at the parents. Done deal. And John sits there and acts like, no, wasn't nobody in my house. And Steve Thomas is telling you, yes, they were. We already talked, like we called it. It's like the Ramseys don't know anything. Everything that they're suggesting has already been done. You're behind. You're late. Genius. Captain Obvious. You know what you guys should do? You guys should call the FBI. We did that already.
And your daughter is dead. That would drive me nuts. So I don't know how you get through a day.
I have a faith that comes from only one source, God knows who killed JonBenet Ramsey. Steve Thomas does not know, Patsy Ramsey does not know, and John Ramsey does not know. God knows, and the truth is going to prevail.
What about Burke? What about Burke? Does Burke know? Does Burke know who killed JonBenet? What about him?
This is not.
You have complete faith in that.
Absolutely. We, with the help of the police authorities, this case can be
Well, we
solved.
made a leap forward here if they all sit down.
Well,
You've got to agree with
absolutely.
that.
But the Bible also says, without confession, there is no forgiveness. Patsy, do you think
It doesn't say that.
it doesn't?
Christ did not ask
Without
for
without
repentance
confession,
when he forgave
there
his
is no
executors.
forgiveness.
What?
Do you think that God will forgive the person who did this?
That's up to
That's
that
up to God.
person and God.
Do you support the death penalty for the person who is ultimately convicted in
not.
this crime?
So I wanted to kind of step back and understand why they made what the statements that they made. That didn't make sense to me. So essentially Patsy just kind of said, hey, I believe that this person will be found. It's my faith and my belief that this person will be found. That's what Patsy said. And God will help us find this killer. Steve Thomas jumps in and says, without faith, there's no forgiveness. Or without repentance, there's no forgiveness. I think kind of assuming that, well, I mean, for God to make everything all right, you need to repent, don't you? He's essentially calling her out and saying, I mean, I pin you for this, for God to make everything all right and for God to find this killer, that killer would need to, this killer needs to repent and stop hiding and acting like they don't know who did it. You, Patsy, is essentially what he's saying. And then John responds and says, well, it's not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to repent. Jesus knows your heart. And so therefore, if your heart is pure and he knows what's right, then he'll forgive you. You don't even have to say it. He'll forgive you, is essentially what's being said here. So it's almost like, if you want to read into it, it's almost like John is kind of admitting their own wrongdoing in a sense. Like, again, like he said before, I was there. And then now he's coming back and letting his biblical theology reflect. Not only was I there, but I know the Bible enough to know that I don't want, and this is just me reading into it, I don't want to ask for forgiveness here. I don't think I can. Or whoever needs to ask for forgiveness, they may not be able to. However, God will forgive them their trespasses because he knows their heart. And we assume that whoever did this, they have a good heart that is worthy of forgiveness without repentance, is essentially kind of what's being said here.
It doesn't say that.
It doesn't?
Christ did not
Without
repentance
confession,
when he forgave
there
his
is no
executors.
forgiveness. Do you think that God will forgive the?
And Steve Thomas quoted he paraphrased a bunch of verses into one. And essentially what John is talking about, he's referring to when Christ was on the cross, is what he's referring to. And, Jesus was saying, forgive them for they know not what they do. And so it's not immediately asking for repentance, but repentance should be a part of it. Essentially what should be happening.
Person who did this.
That's up to
That's
that
up to God.
person and God.
Do you support the death penalty for the person who is ultimately
I
convicted
do
in
not
this crime?
support the death penalty because of the horrible flaws I've seen in our justice system. There are many, many innocent people on death row today because of people like Steve Thomas.
Patsy,
I concur.
That's a very weird thing to say too. Do you think that this person should ask for forgiveness? And they said that's up to that person and God. The correct response, of course I want, you know what that's like? When they asked John, hey, you're still pushing for this thing to be solved. What do you gain out of this? John says, I don't gain anything. I'm doing this for my grandkids. That's really weird. Why don't you gain anything? You would gain an understanding of who killed your daughter. And if this person comes back and says, I killed your daughter, please forgive me, you gain understanding of who killed your daughter. Plus, you get an individual who comes back and who is trying to be contrite and who is trying to humble themselves and come before you and say, I did wrong. Even if you don't expect it, the proper response should be, it would be nice. I would love nothing more but for this person to come and say, I did wrong. Please forgive me. People pay attention to people who go to prison and never admit they're wrong, and they wait their entire life. Example, OJ. They wait their entire life for this individual to apologize. And they try to get him to apologize at the appeals or the parole hearings and stuff like that. They try to get them to apologize on all of those forums because I want to know that you're truly sorry. That's what the judges look for. I want to know that you're truly sorry for what you've done and you truly understand what you've done. So Patsy and John's response is incorrect behaviorally. They should have said, of course, I want them to come apologize because you hurt me. You hurt my family. You took away a sister from my son. My son lost a sister. I lost a daughter. My wife lost a daughter. My in-laws and my parents lost a grandchild. My brothers, my sisters, they lost a niece. Friends lost a friend. That would be the proper response. But instead, you guys said, oh, we don't got to know whether this person, does anything. That's between him and God. Sort of indicating whoever this person is, you better get it right with God. Whoever you are, you better ask God for forgiveness because that's your relationship. We've taken our hands off of it. Who would parents of a slain child in this way? Who would they leave it up into the hands of God for? Who could get off so easy? I want you to ask yourself that question. Who would a parent who loses a child let off easy like that?
You support the death penalty in this case, whoever killed your daughter.
No, because they would say, what if it's the wrong guy that's convicted?
We
And they
need
find out
we
10
need a
years later.
DNA database, as one of the things that we're purporting, because if we have unexplained DNA, if we knew whose DNA that
There
was,
is DNA there.
then we would know who killed JonBenet
Nobody
Ramsey.
at this table is a DNA expert, and the DNA experts in this case, at the time I left, it told us this is not a DNA case because of issues, degradation, contamination.
Unidentified DNA that was found under her fingernails and on her underwear.
It could have been absent 5 days ago.
Oh, please.
Yeah, no, there are other sources other than the killer
Why would it
for
be
this
under her
DNA
fingernails
report.
and her underwear?
If there are other sources, then tell me who it is. But until we know who it is,
It-
I'm
if
hopeful
it's-
that DNA.
No. Bullheaded, loud and wrong. You are loud and wrong. Steve Thomas is telling you about the DNA. He's telling you what's in the forensics. That's the true forensics. Degraded. That's in the forensic report. This piece could not be tested because the DNA is degraded. This piece could not be tested because this piece is degraded. That's in the This is talking about, and this was done in 2008, in which they said that this is essentially got the same results. This is what Mary Lacey exonerated on. They said they got the same results as 1997. And this is talking about for the long johns. And they go in here and the 4 things that they tested for the long johns in different areas of the long johns for part C and part D. Part C is going to be interior top right half of the long johns, interior top left half of the long johns. So we're talking about inside of the long johns. What did they say? Partial DNA profile obtained for contains a mixture of at least 2 individuals, majority from the victim, and at least one other additional minor contributor. Minor contributor level is low, therefore is not suitable for comparison. Number 4, talking about part D, contains a mixture of at least 3 individuals, the victim and at least the male, and somebody else. Due to the complexity of this mixture, it's deemed unsuitable for any further comparison. You want more? This is page 8. Let's go to page 10. Page 9. Yeah, page 10. We're looking at the Barbie nightgown. And I think on this one, they pulled everybody who they could. They pulled Burke and they pulled Patsy. But in every other case, this DNA is degraded. It's not useful. Number 4. No DNA developed. No DNA developed. DNA from blood matched the victim's DNA profile. That's the duct tape. Not previously examined. Not examined. That's what I'm saying. They're struggling. Talking about, dude. Don't know your head from a hole in the ground. Just up here talking about, oh, we're hopeful. We have nothing. Nothing useful at all from this DNA. What the heck are you talking about?
It belongs to the killer.
This table was a DNA expert, and the DNA experts in this case, at the time I left, had told us this is not a DNA case because of issues,
There
degradation,
is
contamination.
unidentified DNA that was found under her fingernails and on her underwear.
It could have been asked from 5 days ago.
Oh, please.
Yeah, no,
It could have been from 5 days ago. Degraded. My God. Listen to what people are telling you. That's possible. Which they said.
there are other sources other than the killer
Why would
for
it be
this
under her
DNA
fingernails
report.
and her underwear?
If there are other sources, then tell me who it is. But if
We don't. You. What are you talking about? If there's other sources, then tell me who it is. God. My God. If you know what you're talking about, you know. That was dumb. We don't know. That's what I'm sitting here telling you. Do you know how DNA works? Bro, do you know how DNA works? Let's just get that established. We collect the DNA, we swipe it, and we test it against the material, and it says, hey, this is unidentified. We don't know whose DNA it is. That's why, and you are talking about an unidentified male. That's why he's unidentified, because we don't know who it is. Duh. Well, if they are, then tell me who they are. We're trying to, that, like, bro, if we knew who they were, we would solve the case. If we knew that, we would solve the case. That's why there's a DNA database, so we can input these things that we don't know in hopes of getting a hit somewhere. Because we don't know. That's, oh my God, what are you talking about?
until we know who it is, I'm
If
hopeful
it's-
that DNA belongs to the killer.
We'll be back with our remaining moments with Steve Thomas and the
So all this time, John has been telling you, first of all, he didn't know crap about DNA. Second of all, he's hopeful that a degraded sample will lead him to the killer. And John Ramsey has been telling the public, oh, there's strong DNA. No, it's not. We told you early on the Larry King show that the DNA is degraded and it's dang near not useful. And you've been holding on to this DNA story this entire time. Delusional.
Ramseys on this edition of Larry King Live. Tomorrow night, we begin our celebration of 20 years of CNN, 15 years of Larry King Live with two 2-hour specials, tomorrow night and Friday night. And on Saturday night, the new King of Jordan. We'll be right back. Some closing questions for each. You ever have doubts about your theory?
Certainly, questions come and go, but again, myself and others that were associated with this case try to step back and look at the big picture in the circumstantial case. Everybody wishes it was a smoke. Everybody at this table wishes it was a smoking gun, no doubt, beyond a reasonable doubt case. It's not. It's a circumstantial case.
Yeah. Well, all cases where there's no witness.
Well, not necessarily if there's ballistics or DNA evidence or a bloody fingerprint.
But you are content that if they meet with everybody and meets with Boulder Police, as came up here tonight, that's going to be a step forward.
It's a start. I'm certainly not saying anybody's going to be exonerated.
Do you think it's possible, Patsy, that you know the killer? I mean, not know who it is, but that this may be someone who knows you.
I don't know. That's been speculated for 3
You
years.
speculate. What do you think?
You know,
I mean, you must think about it all the time.
I think about it all the time, every day, every waking moment. Who could have done this to my daughter?
John, do you think? You said it might be someone mad at you.
Ruling out any possibility. It's a horrible thought to think that someone would be angry with me enough to kill my daughter. But I'm not ruling out anything.
Think this is ever going to go away?
It'll never go away.
For us.
For us, it won't.
That's not what he asked. He asked you, who do you think it is?
It'll never go away. But I'm confident with God's help, we will find out who did this.
Steve, if they didn't, you have to admit this is a terrible tragedy.
Well, we'll
Beyond
not.
the tragedy of the death.
At this point, absent a confession, the killer has to confess in this case because it's arguable that Patsy could never be convicted because reasonable doubt. And John, let me finish my thought. Patsy cannot be convicted because of some reasonable doubt, but an intruder cannot be convicted either because of the same reasonable doubt. This case requires a confession.
It requires DNA
We have the
identification.
killer's calling card. We have 3.
He's right. Steve Thomas is right. Like we talked about in the forensics video, the killer has the same calling card as Patsy. According to the forensics, the killer has the same calling card. Same thing.
3 pages of handwriting this killer left for us.
We
That's
do.
a gift. We have DNA that might be a gift. We don't know yet.
And
That
You gotta get a
handwriting,
match.
when we find the right suspect and get enough samples, 3 pages of handwriting will allow us to make a conclusive match. That has been stated by experts in the handwriting field.
That's
This
the
is
key
a
to this whole thing,
huge
right?
key and a huge gift.
It's a strange letter, isn't it?
Absolutely. It is an absolutely bizarre letter that the writer knew so much about this family using Patsy's tablet, a pen from within the home,
But
and
he
other.
did not use JonBenet's name.
He or she certainly did not. I don't know what your point is with that.
They may not have known the name of the child.
Well, certainly
May
knew
have
that the
known
dog wasn't
of-
home, that the alarm wasn't on, that John had this remarkably coincidental bonus of $118,000. Good Southern common sense. The chances of this being some random intruder, one question
don't think it's random.
document examiner said are infinitesimal.
Are you suing Steve?
Yes. Yeah, Steve.
You expect
Spend
this?
a lot of quality time with what you call Team Ramsey.
We'll see you, John.
Thank you all for agreeing to do this. Thank you, Ramses. Thank you, Steve. Again, the books are John and Patsy Ramsey's book is The Death of Innocence. Steve Thomas's book is Inside the Ramsey Murder Investigation. JonBenet, Inside the Ramsey Murder Investigation. This crime took place Christmas night, 1996, in Boulder, Colorado. We invite you to stay tuned now for CNN Newsstand. We'll see you tomorrow night from Atlanta with a 2-hour special kicking off 2 2-hour specials.
So that's the video. Let me know what you think. Starting to get a better picture. As I'm saying, John and Patsy have been doing this for a long time. And you wonder, and that's what I'm saying, unless you check them and you say, well, wait a minute, this document said this, or these people said this. Unless you check them with those documents, you'll be led on a wild goose chase. Unless you read those documents for yourself, you'll be led on a wild goose chase to believe this and be like, what? And I'm not even saying that you have to think that the Ramseys did it. I'm not saying that. I'm saying some of this stuff that they talk about is just like, well, no, that's not true. Like, that's not even remotely true. That's not going to lead us anywhere. For real. Like, that's a waste of my time. That's what I'm saying. So anyways, let me know what you think. Like, share, subscribe. Let me know what you think in the comments, whatnot. Obviously, as always, made some errors. Let me know if you've seen something around, an article or something like that. Let me know. Maybe I missed something. But until next time, take care of yourself. Look out for yourself. Take it easy.